Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we have something a little different. The station received 10 letters from a traveler named Mike. He spent 3 months traveling through Asia, and in those letters he described a number of strange things that happened along the way. Some of them have simple explanations, some of them don't. We're going to read the letters in the order they were written. So, let's see where Mike was when he wrote the first one. The fruit for the road. I'm writing this on a bus, and I don't know if I'll send it. The station said you take letters, not just calls. This is the first one I've written, and if you read it on the air, call me Mike, because I'd rather my family not know I spent money on this. I'm about 2 weeks into a trip through Asia, and this happened on my second stop, in Ayutthaya. Before it happened, I would have told you I don't believe in anything like this. I still don't know what I believe. That is why I'm writing it down, because it needs to exist somewhere that isn't my head, and I've run out of other people to tell. I came up from Bangkok on the morning train. The train was old and loud, the windows wouldn't close, and the rice fields slid past for an hour and a half before the town appeared. Flat, dusty, cut through by the river. At the station, the tuk-tuk drivers came at me the way they do everywhere, and I walked instead, because walking is free and I had nowhere to be until the next day. The guest house was on the riverside of the old town, down a lane of shuttered shop fronts. A faded sign, villa, rooms. It was cheap. Which was the point. I had been saving for this trip for a year, a list of countries, a budget, a plan to send postcards home. Bangkok was the first stop, and I had spent 3 days there getting over the flight and the heat and the fact that I was really doing it. Ayutthaya was number 2 on the list. 2 nights. Then north. The woman who ran it came out before I knocked. She was older than I'd expected. Thin gray hair pulled back hard, and she didn't smile. She didn't ask me which room I wanted. She looked at me for a moment, took a key off a board behind the desk and said, "You stay in 3 rules. Do not open the west window. Do not touch the little house in the yard. Do not leave your door open at night." Then she smiled. A small smile like she'd remembered she was supposed to, and said breakfast was from 6. I told myself it was hospitality of a particular kind, the kind where the owner has decided you are a person who needs rules. Fine. I paid for 3 nights, took the key, and carried my bag up. The room was at the back of the building, 2nd floor, and it had everything a $4 room should have. A bed that dipped in the middle, a ceiling fan, a chair, a window. The west window faced the yard, and in the corner of the yard stood the little house, about the size of a birdhouse, on a concrete post, with a pointed roof and a small plate in front of it. On the plate, every day, a small bunch of bananas, a cup of water, incense, sticks in a jar. I'd seen pictures of these before. Everyone who has been to Thailand has. The little spirit houses. I'd never thought about them one way or the other. This one was old. The paint worn off the roof, and the plate was scrubbed clean. Somebody took care of it. Every evening at dusk the owner came out, carried the plate away, and brought a fresh one. New bananas. Clean water, new incense. Then she pressed her hands together and bowed to the little house once and went back inside. I watched her do it from my window on the first evening. Brochure stuff, I figured. This is the part of Thailand people put in guidebooks. The neighbor caught me in the lane that evening. He had a little English. He nodded at the building and said, out of nowhere, "Do not open the west window." I asked him why. He smiled, said no English, and went inside. A man who will say the rule but not the reason and hides behind not speaking your language. That stayed with me more than the rule itself. I saw him again the next morning, and he looked at me, then looked away, and I knew he wasn't going to say anything more. The night market by the pier was good. I ate too much and walked back late, and the river was black and the boats were tied up and the moon was out. The guest house had a dog, a thin brown dog that belonged there the way the furniture did. It followed me up the lane, and when I reached the door of number 4 it stopped. It would not cross the threshold. It stood with its head low and made a sound I can't write down properly. Not a growl. Something smaller further back in the throat. The owner came out in her nightdress and scolded it in Thai, the way you'd scold a child, and pulled it away by the collar. She didn't look at me. I said good night. She said good night. The dog looked back at my door the whole way it was being dragged. The next day I saw the ruins. I took a tuk-tuk to Wat Mahathat and walked the old grounds. The fallen prangs, the rows of headless Buddhas, the famous head grown into the tree roots. You've seen the pictures. Everyone has. It is real. I stood in front of it a long time and felt nothing particular, which I mention only because of what I did feel later. In a room that cost $4 a night. It was hot. Ayutthaya in the dry season is hot, the way a held breath is hot. The room had a ceiling fan that moved the heat around without reducing it. The west window was the only real air. Around 3 in the afternoon I opened it. It was that or lie in the heat with the fan moving the heat around. The little house was right below, on its post. I leaned out and looked at it and saw nothing worth rules. A plate, a cup, some sticks in a jar. I left the window open. That evening she changed the offerings again, at the same hour as before, and made her bow. I watched from the window, and this time she looked at my window before she went back in. One glance up at where I stood. Then she went inside. All of it was texture, the kind of thing you get in a cheap guest house, in a country you don't know. Later, I went down to the yard. There is a bench by the wall, and I sat on it with a bottle of beer and my book. And it was almost pleasant, the last of the heat coming off the concrete. The river sound beyond the lane. The owner came out. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood in the kitchen doorway and watched me for a moment. And then she came across the yard and stood between me and the little house, and she pointed to the other side of the yard, where the bench had been moved out of the sun. "Sit there," she said. I said this spot was fine. She said, "Sit there again," and she waited. So I moved. She watched me move, and then she went about her evening. She checked the latch on the gate. She picked a leaf off the path. She did not look at the little house at all. I sat on the other bench with my beer and my book and did not read a single line. I was annoyed, and I was beginning to understand that being annoyed did not matter. That night I walked the lane after dinner, and I counted the other places with rooms. There was a sign 2 doors down, guest house, and I stood outside it and almost went in to ask, but I had paid through the next night, and my bag was unpacked, and the woman was odd. But she had not done anything to me. You do not leave a room because its owner has rules and a dog that will not cross a threshold. You would not. I walked back and went to bed. The dog came again that night. It stopped at my threshold, head low, and made the sound, and the owner came out and scolded it and dragged it off. As before, I was beginning to find the routine almost comforting. Around 11 the power flickered and died. I sat in the dark a moment, and then the owner came up the stairs with a flashlight and stood in my doorway and said she would check the wiring. She went to the switch on the wall, and then she looked at the open window. The window was the first thing she looked at before the switch, and she crossed the room and closed it herself. "Better closed," she said. She didn't look at me when she said it. I said the room was hot. She said the fan was enough and left. The power came back 2 minutes later. The window stayed closed for about an hour. Then I got up and opened it again. It was not defiance. It was a window, and it was hot. And I had paid to sleep somewhere that had air. The owner was superstitious, or wanted the room kept a certain way, and I was a guest, not a child. That was the thinking. I want to be fair to myself about that, because it matters what I knew then. I knew there was a rule, and I knew why I broke it. And both of those things seemed reasonable at the time. I left the window open and lay down and eventually slept. I woke at 4 in the morning. The heat had broken, or the fan had, and the quiet woke me. The way quiet does when it is deeper than it should be. I went to the window for air. The yard was still. The offering plate was empty. Not cleared, empty. The bananas were gone. The cup was tipped, and there was a dark patch on the plate where the water had been. The incense jar held cold ash. She had changed it at dusk. I had watched her. 9 hours. The yard gate is an old latch on the inside. You cannot work it from outside, and I had seen her latch it before bed. No one had crossed that yard. I stood at the window a long time, counting the hours again, and I could not make them work. I was sweating, which made no sense, because the room had finally cooled. My hands were cold on the sill. I did not go down. I wanted to, and I could not make my legs agree. I stood at the window and watched the yard until the sky began to lighten. Nothing moved in it. The empty plate sat on its post like a dish someone had forgotten to wash. At 6:30 the owner came out. I watched her from the window, the way I'd watched her every evening. She walked to the little house, and she picked up the empty plate. She picked it up without surprise, without stopping, the way you pick up a plate that is supposed to be empty, and she carried it inside. She came back with a fresh one. Bananas water. Incense. She set it down, pressed her hands together, bowed, and straightened. And then she looked up at my window, straight at it, and held the look for a moment before she went back inside. I stood at the window and I could not decide whether the look meant she knew I was watching, or meant something else entirely. At breakfast I asked her about the little house. I tried to make it sound like a traveler's question. "What is it for?" I said. She put down the pot she was carrying and looked at me. "It keeps the yard," she said. That was all. She went back to the kitchen. I have turned those 4 words over in my head 100 times since. It keeps the yard. I don't know which way she meant it. At 7 I went down and walked through the yard on my way to the street. I stopped at the little house. I looked at the plate. Full, fresh, the water clear, and then I looked at the ground around the post. The yard is packed dust, and it holds prints. Hers were there from the morning change, going and coming. Mine were there from the day before. There were no other prints, no sandals, nothing that could have taken the fruit and tipped the cup between dusk and 4 in the morning. The gate was latched. From the inside, the way she always left it. I stood there and looked at the plate, and I looked at the gate, and I did not ask her anything. I was afraid of the answer, and I was more afraid there wasn't one. The photos. This part I can't explain either, and I've gone over it the most. On the first day I took pictures of the room to send my sister. The bed, the fan, the window, the view out over the yard. I took 6 of them. Later at the ruins, I scrolled through them, and in every picture of the room the west window is a flat black square. Morning light, afternoon light, window open or shut black, like the camera couldn't read it, as if nothing was there. And in the picture I took from the doorway, the one with the chair by the window, there is a shadow on the wall behind the chair. Taller than me. I am alone in all of them. I zoomed in until the picture broke into noise. I have looked at that picture more times than I want to admit. I thought about showing it to the owner. I imagined her face. I put the phone away. I have not sent the photos to my sister. I don't know what I would write in the message. That afternoon I took a new photo of the open window to prove to myself the camera was wrong. In the photo the window is open and the square is black. I put the phone down and booked a night bus out of town, from a ticket stand by the pier, and I paid and took the paper ticket and folded it small. That night I slept badly, which surprised me because I had decided I was leaving and that should have been enough. I woke twice. The second time I lay in the dark and listened, and there was nothing to hear, no dog, no gate, no wind, and I was angry at myself for listening. The window was open. Nothing came to it. I did not know whether the quiet meant the trouble had passed or was saving itself. On the last morning I left the window open, the way I had every day, and took the little ferry across the river to the far ruins. The ferry is a flat boat on a rope. An old man pulls it across. 5 baht each way. From the water the guest house was small and ordinary, a pale building with a green roof, and the little house on its post in the corner of the yard was a speck. I could see my window from the boat. It was closed. I had left it open an hour before, and I was standing on a boat where no one else could have been at that window, and it was closed. I stared at it until the boat reached the far bank and the building slid out of sight. I walked the far bank for an hour. Another what? More ruins. The same heat. No pictures. I tried to convince myself I had closed the window before leaving and forgotten. I had not closed it. I was sure of it then, and I am sure of it now. When I came back, the window was open again. I did not touch it. I did not ask. In the morning I packed. I had paid for 3 nights. I was leaving after 2, and I had no good reason I could say out loud. At the desk, the owner did not ask why. She looked at the bag and then at me, and she counted out the 3rd night's money and put it on the desk without being asked. I had not asked for it. Then she went into the kitchen and came back with a small bunch of bananas, and she held them out and said, "For the road." I took them. I said thank you. She stood at the desk and watched me go, and I did not look back at the yard, and I did not look at the window. I'm on the bus now, heading north, and the bananas are in my lap. They are the fruit that sits on the plate in front of the little house. I have not eaten them. I almost ate one to prove something. That fruit is just fruit. That nothing would happen. And I could not make my hand do it. I don't know what she was doing. Keeping the room safe, or keeping something else fed, or just being kind to a traveler who paid for 3 nights and left after 2. Which of those is worse, I can't say. The man beside me asked where I got the fruit. I told him the guest house gave it to me for the road. He nodded and slept. I have not peeled one. I have held these bananas for 6 hours now, and I am writing this instead of eating them. Whatever it means, I don't think I want to know.